Hello, everybody. I am your host, Joshua Void. And today we're having a great and wonderful discussion based on Jehovah's Witness. We're really going to delve into what the Jehovah's Witness actually believe in. We're going to delve into how the Jehovah's Witness interact with those who leave the religion, and we're going to interact. And we're going to see how the Jehovah's Witnesses try to stay in power. But before all that, I really do want to thank the Patreon supporters, Linear and TART. Thank you both so much for helping me do what I do, which is provide or make videos and provide content for the viewers such as yourself. So thank you very much for doing that, and it's greatly appreciated. So before I go on, I also want to say that this is going to be a series. What we're actually starting right now is going to be the first episode of a entirety of a series based on Jehovah's Witness or Jehovah's Witness itself. And this is where we're really going to delve deeper into the actual discussion and how we're going to bring other Jehovah's Witnesses into the conversation, not today, but hopefully in future videos, in order to really have a fruitful and great discussion. But without further ado, I would like to actually bring on a wonderful guest and also a co-host, Katy Sykes. Katy Sykes, thank you so much again for coming on. It is always a pleasure having you. And I think this is a discussion that needs to be had. I don't think a lot of individuals know about Jehovah's Witness that much or what they actually believe in. And a lot of times I think that atheists, when they're asking questions or when they try to point their finger at Jehovah's Witness, they kind of miss the mark. Is that what you think also?
Yes, of course. It's not a mainstream religion, so a lot of people get mixed up about some of the beliefs. It's not something that they're used to dealing with. In my experience, I get a lot of questions which are really meant for like ex-Catholics and things like that. So it's and you just get asked them over and over again. So there's not enough knowledge out there about Jehovah's Witnesses, in my view.
I completely agreed. I completely agreed. I completely agree. And I think that that's something that I really want to try to bring to the viewer is what would be the best way in order to actually tackle Jehovah's Witnesses in a particular way where we can actually discuss what they actually believe in rather than, as you stated, bringing out arguments that are either for ex-Catholics or other type of Christian denominations, which have nothing in common necessarily with Jehovah's Witness in and of itself.
Yes, exactly.
So what I would state is, or what I would ask is, what are the most common misconceptions that we mostly hear when it comes to the Jehovah's Witness, for instance?
So a lot of the time it's mainly to do with the mainstream beliefs of Christianity. So hell and heaven and Jesus's life and Jesus's death and all of these things are just that little bit different, if not sometimes quite a lot different than the mainstream in the beliefs of Jehovah's Witnesses. So you'll get a lot of questions about hell, and get a lot of questions about heaven, and especially with Jesus, and that people are assuming that you believe the same as them if they're religious, or they're assuming that being a Jehovah's Witness, you came from Christianity like they did,
Right.
If they're atheists. So that can get quite annoying, and you're having to explain yourself over and over again to people.
Right.
But as we were discussing before the show, this isn't their fault. they're from mainstream religion. It's the fault of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses in some way, because we leave Jehovah's Witnesses and we have a major tendency to just click together and stay in our same little groups of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, which is a big mistake if you're wanting to increase the knowledge base of the people that are going to be dealing with Jehovah's Witnesses.
Absolutely. I would completely agree with that. And I think too, the implications, right, is that individuals, since they don't really understand the Jehovah's Witnesses that much, they could be bamboozled in a sense into actually thinking that, oh, okay, well, maybe the Jehovah's Witness is completely different from the other religious faiths which are out there, and can be led astray from the information which is coming through to them, because they just really don't know what the circumstances and what they're actually dealing with. So I think that's why, which I would agree with, I think that more Jehovah's Witnesses should try to go on to other atheist channels in order to really flesh out that information, in order to actually give information that the mainstream has no idea of, and really give them something that they can utilize when they're in conversations with Jehovah's Witness in the future, if they ever have any interactions with them.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's why I really enjoyed my time on the Promethean. It's why I really enjoy coming onto your show on here, because, if I just stick on my own channel and just do ex-Jehovah's Witness content, then all I'm doing is just creating another click, and that's not going to help anybody.
Right.
So coming out and speaking, in front of other people from other faiths and other backgrounds, is just amazing.
Absolutely. And before we go into the actual the Jehovah's Witness, I would also state too that I would say it's a bit, I want to say atheist fault, but I think that that certain atheist groups that are out there, they try at first and then they give up, right? They're kind of like, okay, well, they want to stay in their own clique. We're going to stay inside ours, and we're going to go into discussions based on mainstream religions, which I think that the problem is, or actually not even mainstream religions, we're going to stay on topic with the religion that we know best, right? But the problem that I see with that is that you're not necessarily introducing individuals to the cults that are out there and to other religions that are out there that can have huge sway over individuals, because they don't know any of the information about those said religions. And henceforth, we need to, in my opinion, and that's why, again, the Atheist Uprising wants to try to grab individuals from these who left these cults and kind of bring them in order to give the information that individuals need in order for them to understand and know how to really exchange with these cults and with these other religions that they probably have no idea of, in a sense.
Yeah, it's a mentality of the cult is, and it's not just with Jehovah's Witnesses; it is with a lot of the cults as well. But specifically with Jehovah's Witnesses, because that's where my background is. We were always taught that these our reality, like sort of the reality of Jehovah's Witnesses, God's reality, and then there was the world. And it was always set aside from very young age, in my case, since I was born, that the world is different. The people out there are different. They're Satan's people. They're the non-believers. They're the ones that have nothing to do with us, and we don't have anything to do with them. And you get taught from a very young age to separate yourself from everything worldly. And so it sort of makes sense that when Jehovah's Witnesses leave the faith, or when other cults members leave their respective cults, then it makes sense that they're going to click together.
Exactly.
And people need to, other atheists need, like you mentioned, need to take that into account when they're dealing with people. You know, if they have come from a cult, maybe it's going to take a little bit of extra work to get them to engage.
Exactly. Exactly. And I think that's where we can make headway, and that's where we can actually make valuable change to individuals who might even be Jehovah's Witness, but listening to the mainstream sort of atheists and being like, look, see, they have everything wrong with what they're stating about us. And then the reality of the situation is that they just need one channel that goes mainstream but focuses on the other religions, which are other cults which are out there based on the Christian denomination. And all of a sudden you start to realize, oh, wow, they have something that can actually be used to show what we really are. And I think that's something that really makes the mark and hits the mark. So, all in all, let's delve into the Jehovah's Witnesses. So,
Yes, let's do that.
when we look at the Jehovah's Witnesses, we know that you have the elders, who are the individuals that mostly focus, or they're the upper echelon.
Multiple levels. Yeah.
Right.
Well, they're upper echelon of the local.
Right.
The thing. So with as far as the hierarchy goes,
Right.
you've got your congregations, which are your local, maybe made up of about 100 members, and that's just your local area. And in charge of that, you'll have your elders. Serving underneath those, you'll have your ministerial servants, and that's basically the two lowest levels of the hierarchy. Then above that, you've got your circuit overseers and your district overseers. So your circuit overseers will be in charge of different bodies of elders within a circuit, and then your district is different circuits, to make up a district. And then you've got your national, which is your Bethel level. And within the Bethel level, you'll have each country will have its own Bethel, and they'll have a group of people sitting on a committee which will run that country, and then they all answer to the governing body, which is in Pennsylvania. I think Pennsylvania in America.
Wow.
So and they'll all answer up to them. So, and that's basically the hierarchy of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Wow. Okay. So there's definitely like a command structure,
Oh, yes.
which is based on Jehovah's Witnesses in and of itself, but everything goes back to the no, I'm forgetting, my brain is very, but what's the top
Governing
echelon?
body. It goes all the way up to the governing body,
Governing body.
who are believed to be ordained by Jehovah himself. So, what they say goes. They are infallible. They're completely 100% trustworthy. Not, but yeah, that's the beliefs that are put down anyway. So they're like basically gods on earth, basically. To Jehovah's Witnesses.
Wow.
Yeah.
So whatever they say, no matter where Jehovah's Witnesses are around the world, it goes.
Oh yes, if they can do whatever they just as a group between each of them, they can do whatever they want with the faith. These things that I remember as a child, different scripture and stuff, different understandings, interpretations of certain scriptures that have changed now, and that's the governing body just changing them at will whenever they want. And but the power that they have is so intense. I've had conversations with my grandma, who is still a Jehovah's Witness, about some of these changes that I'd noticed over the years.
Right.
And she said, "No, you're remembering wrong. They've always been this way." And I'm like, well, if I'm remembering wrong, every ex-Jehovah's Witness out there is also remembering wrong, because they also remember it to be very different. And she's like, no, it's always been that way. So when they make a change, it's like it just rewrites time in the mind of Jehovah's Witnesses.
Huh. So you're saying, but when we talk about rewriting, are we talking about just like certain words within the scripture itself?
No, no,
Are we actually
teachings as
talking
well,
about?
actual interpretations of the scriptures. They've even at some point, I can't remember what the book is, but there was a book that they'd written decades ago, which they've now made illegal within their own faith. It's illegal. It's banned. It's not allowed for any Jehovah's Witness to own a copy of that, and it's because
Wow.
they changed a lot of the interpretations from that that were written back at that time. They've changed that ever since, and they don't want everyone to work that out.
That's crazy. So you're saying that the whole entire this book that has been written by them, like
Mm-hmm.
nobody else created it, nobody on the outside
Written
writing
by
about
them.
it,
Yeah.
by them, but they have changed it so much that now it is kind of like contra the Jehovah's Witness now, and henceforth it's banned within their own constituency.
Yeah. There was speaking to one Jehovah's Witness who said that they'd actually been removed from the organization because they owned that book.
What?
Yeah.
Okay, so even if you own the book itself, you have a threat above you of actually being excommunicated from Jehovah's Witness itself.
Yeah. Because some of the teachings that they changed, it was eye opening. If you read it as a Jehovah's Witness, it's eye opening, and it can actually lead you to leave. And so that's why they banned it.
Wow. Okay. Now, the other thing that I would like to delve into is that I heard that Jehovah's Witnesses, I might be getting the word wrong, but are either annihilationists. I was about to say destructionists, but annihilationists. So, in a sense, there's not really a heaven. Like Earth is the heaven, right?
Yeah. So there is a heaven, but it's very different. So within Jehovah's Witnesses, heaven is only for the angels and 144,000 humans, which are made kings and priests in heaven. But that number is only 144,000. Now, there's a lot of calculations and stuff which they do from the Book of Revelation and the Book of Ezekiel, and that they piece together to actually come up with this number.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's what they believe. So everyone else is resurrected if they're dead, or live on past Armageddon.
Wow.
And live forever on a paradise earth. And so that's their teaching of the afterlife, if you want to call it that.
Interesting. So in a sense, there's only a select few that get to this heaven, this heavenly body, and that is for kings that have converted to Jehovah's Witness.
No. It's for humans who were so fervent with their faith that they were ordained by Jehovah to become kings and priests in heaven.
Oh, okay. So in a sense, it's kind of like a title that is given to people who are extremely fervent within their belief, in a sense,
Yes.
that they followed the belief to such a T that now they've gotten to this higher level of enlightenment.
So every member of the governing body is anointed. That's the term given to anyone that's part of the 144,000. So every member of the governing body is anointed ones, and anyone else who happens to be anointed or who isn't part of the governing body, they don't have to do what the governing body says. They can do whatever they want because they're at the same level. They're just not running the organization.
Wow. Okay, so that in itself just blew my mind in a sense, because I always thought that with Jehovah's Witnesses, it was based on the annihilationist theory that individuals, the earth is going to have some sort of cataclysmic event that was going to happen.
Here's that side of it as well.
Right. But then from there, like even the governing body, in a sense, or those individuals would be resurrected back onto the new earth, in a sense, or maybe not resurrected, but survive past, as you stated, Armageddon on new earth. I didn't know that there was a differentiation between the people who believe and those who were fervent believers in the faith.
Yeah.
Where they had higher access and can be anointed to these new, are anointed into heaven, in a sense, while everybody else needs to live in this new earth. Or not in, but on new earth. My apologies.
Yes. After Armageddon, it's believed that the governing body will ascend to the heavens. Oh, sorry, I've got a bit of a sore throat.
No.
Yeah, so it's believed that they'll ascend to the heavens.
Okay.
And then other people will take their position on Earth to run the organization. But the truly interesting point is that any of these anointed ones within Jehovah's Witnesses, there's no like criteria to, sort of criteria that they've got to meet to become anointed. Anyone who's a Jehovah's Witness can say they're anointed. It's a personal thing. This is what always confused me. Is it's a personal thing between them and Jehovah. So if they could just wake up one morning, go into the congregation and go, yeah, I'm not saying those prayers. I'm anointed. I don't have to anymore. And it's weird. You would have thought with that you'd have had pretty much loads of Jehovah's Witnesses saying, "Oh, I'm anointed," but no, it seems to only the a handful of people actually do say that.
Wow. Okay, but is there any, like, let's just say with the Catholic Church, right? You're kind of elevated through the hierarchy of priest or deacon, priest. I was about to say high chancellor, deacon, priest, not archdeacon, but I'm actually forgetting the things at the moment. But there's a hierarchy before you get to Pope status. But is there any sort of hierarchy of that extent when it gets to, like, with the Jehovah's Witness? Like, could the governing body itself state that, okay, we see that this person is anointed? Or is it really just based on, like, somebody having some sort of dream like state or something like that and being like, you know what, I'm anointed, I don't need to do this?
It's a bit of both. So I remember having a conversation with someone who was used to be a Bethelite and had left the organization. And they were saying that a lot of their that there was not a lot of some of their friends within the Bethel had started saying that they were anointed so that they could move further in the organization.
Wow.
So it seems to be like a bit of a Bethel style culture where you become an elder, then you become a circuit overseer or district overseer, and then you work your way up into the Bethel. And then from there, you've got the option of just staying a normal Bethelite or sort of saying you're anointed and moving up in the ranks even further.
Interesting. So in a sense, it's kind of like an independent thing, but it also helps if you have somebody on the outside also saying that, yes, I think this individual is anointed, type of thing, right?
Yes.
Or okay, interesting. So is there, because I know inside the Bible it says that the earth is going to end in flame, in a sense, when Jesus comes back. Is this the same exact annihilationist theory? Or I shouldn't say theory, but the annihilationist model, I should say, that Jehovah's Witness believe in?
Yes. So when it comes to a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses' belief, there's a lot of interpretation involved and everything. But when it comes to the Book of Revelation, for some reason, they take it literally. So everything within the Book of Revelation, the lakes of fire and the fire and brimstone falling from the heavens and wiping out all of the evildoers and non-believers and all of that is exactly what they believe is 100% true and is going to happen anytime now. The difference with Jehovah's Witnesses and their annihilation theory is that they actually have, they did have dates set. So they started out back in the late 1800s, actually setting a date for Armageddon, and then obviously that didn't come around. Nothing happened, so they just moved the date back, and they did that multiple times. The last time was 1975, I believe, was they set a date. This will be when Armageddon comes about. Nothing happened, and it was such a devastating blow because people were actually, Jehovah's Witnesses were actually selling their houses and giving up their jobs and everything because they really thought it was going to be that date, and nothing happened. So ever since then, they've actually changed, and now they say, right, it started in 1914, the end times, so the last days, as they call it.
Right.
So that started in 1914, and we're now living in this end time period. And in the 2020 convention, one of the governing body members came out and says, we're now in the final part of the last days. So
that is a very interesting statement.
Yeah. So they're like sort of just adding to this whole last days thing and just building it up until they, as they believe they're getting closer and closer.
Yeah. So the whole entire point is to try. There seems to be a guesstimation based on when the world is going to end. And to me, the thing that seems baffling is that what was so different from the first initial, how could I say it? The end time report or something like that. But when they stated, well, this is supposed to be the end times, from the 1975 one where everybody seemed to be selling their homes and everything like that. What was the change or the difference between the two? Because it seems like the second time was more dramatic and devastating to the adherents of the religion or of the cult than the first one. Or am I completely misreading what was being stated?
So I think it's the way that they're interpreting the scriptures themselves, and so the original interpretations were based around climatic events and things. So 1914, for instance, beginning of the last days, it was always quite clear to me that they put that there and that prediction there because it was the beginning of World War One. You had a lot of, and even before that date, you had a lot of build-up towards World War One happening. So they've obviously picked that date because of the Great War. And then there was another prediction made as a build-up of in the 1930s towards World War Two. Obviously World War Two didn't end the world, so that failed. And then 1975, I think it's because of the Cold War. It was building up for nuclear disaster. So they were reading the scriptures, reinterpreting them a new way, and coming up with a new date within the time period that they wanted to say it was going to happen.
Interesting.
But then after that, they're now not doing that anymore, probably because it's just made them look like complete idiots. But but yeah, so they're not doing that anymore. But they are still like taking the, they are still like reinterpreting things in a specific way to try and say when Armageddon's going to come.
Interesting. So each time, whenever there seemed to be, as you stated, a large conflict or whatever, or something that would initiate a large conflict or something new that would come about scientifically, like the atomic bomb, for instance, or nuclear weaponry, then it was kind of like, now we're in the last days in a sense,
Yeah.
because this, okay, interesting. So they were using the current events along with biblical scripture in
Yeah.
order to initiate the end of the world sequencing in a
Yeah.
sense.
And this is actually brings us round quite neatly to one of the changes that I've noticed very recently within Jehovah's Witnesses.
Okay.
So as a kid, I remember always being taught, and this is what I always taught when I was pioneering and teaching other people, is that, you know, the world will get worse and worse and worse until Armageddon comes. And when it can't get when it can't get any worse, that's when Armageddon's going to hit. So it was always this build up in like negativity until it just had to happen,
Right.
and Jehovah had to step in. But very recently, I was having well, not recently. I don't really talk to her much anymore. But a couple of years ago, I was having a conversation with my grandma about this, and she
Okay.
was trying to preach to me and everything, and so I was just having a conversation with her, you know, trying to avoid being preached at. But yeah, and she mentioned something about this teaching, but it had completely been reworded and it had completely switched around. So now what they're being taught is that it's going to get worse and worse until it suddenly gets better. Until there's an announcement, or it seems to get better, until there's an announcement by the UN that the world is at 100% peace, that there's world peace. That is when Armageddon will happen. So when the UN announces that they've fixed all the wars and all of the pestilence and all of the other things that were building up towards Armageddon, as soon as that's all fixed and it's announced that we've got world peace, that's when Jehovah's going to strike and wipe everybody out for being evil. It's like I couldn't get my head around that new teaching, but that is supposedly what they are now being taught.
I am very confused about that, because
Yeah, me too.
the initial statement, even though linear, and I do agree with what linear stated, so the world won't end until the end of the world, sounds like a guess I could make.
Maybe
I
that's why they
completely
changed
agree.
it.
But the thing is that when we build up, and when you're seeing conflicts continue happening until it gets to that final point where somebody, or as you stated, Jehovah just decides, I'm just doing this. It's time for me to restart what I did prior to, or whatever. That makes a little more sense. But now where world peace is actually happening in a sense, and there's
Yeah,
actually peace happening around the world, no more wars, no more, as you stated, pestilence or anything like that, and then Jehovah is
yeah.
going
It
to
shocked me.
strike.
Yeah, it shocked me. Yeah, because like I sort of understood the other one. Like, you know,
Right.
it gets worse and worse, and then all of a sudden, yeah, it ends it all because it's evil. But if they're announcing world peace, then it's comes across a bit like an FU to the world sort of thing. It's like
Right.
quite
It's
happy
like,
with it being all bad, but as soon as it's good, as soon as Satan tries to like outdo him, oh, that's it. No, can't be having none of that.
right. Satan can't be winning this. Bringing good to the people. Please annihilate. But the thing that gets me, and I think this is where we can move into the idea of when individuals themselves start to realize that, okay, there's something amiss, there's something awry with this belief system, we slowly but surely, when we start asking questions, it's like me when in Islam, when I started asking questions, it sort of moved me away from the actual Quran and the hadiths and everything like that. It made me focus more on the world around me, in a sense, rather than what was written within scriptures. However, as we discussed on last show, there seems to be this tendency that individuals, that they don't want individuals to leave. And if they do see that an individual leaves, then they start to demonize that individual as he is being influenced by Satan in some way. They are being influenced in Satan in some way. She is being influenced by Satan in some way. And from there, it seems to me that it starts to break down, where they start to actually shun the individual who's leaving, which makes sense. But then they start to shun, or they start to put lockdown on that individual's family. In a sense. Now, that's the thing where I find it's different with Islam. Islam, they start to shut down the person who is leaving, but they don't shut down the family. The family is still good with Allah, and henceforth they are fine. It's just you who are I swear, Linear. She's like, Josh is definitely influenced by Satan. You're right. No, I'm just kidding. But all in all, it seems that Jehovah's Witness kind of takes it a bit further. It seems that not only did they seem to point the finger at the individual who's leaving, but it also points the finger at the family members.
In some senses, yes. The family sort of treat differently within the organization after somebody has left within that family. But they're still accepted, and they're still, they still have all of the love and all of that and everything. There's just always going to be treated slightly differently now. Where the difference really is with Jehovah's Witnesses is how far they take the shunning. So the person who leaves has to be treated as dead, has to be viewed as dead. They are dead to any of the remaining family members. So that's how far they take the shunning, is no contact whatsoever. This person is now completely dead. You are to treat them as dead. I've heard some stories of family members who are still in having memorial services for the people who've left.
Wow.
Just to keep up with that teaching sort of thing, just to show how fervent they are with following that shunning teaching.
Right. But if we look at that now, but what happens if a family member wishes to go and see the individual who did leave? Because that's the number one thing with Islam. The family might shun the individual who has left. And definitely it's like 20-fold when it's a woman. But still, nonetheless, they will shun the individual. But there's this sense and tendency to want to bring back the individual to the fold, unless it seems like there's no possible way. Then, like the shunning, or actually, I would say the ostracization happens, and it's like, okay, you know what, you're gone, you're gone to me, and henceforth, now I'm going to go down. Like, I have still my other children, and you're just this other to me. Is that the same exact thing in Jehovah's Witness? Or is it more like if a person comes and speaks with a person who has left, that individual has a threat of also being ostracized in society? Or not in society, but in the Jehovah's Witness.
So the actual teaching that they go by says that they shouldn't be having any contact whatsoever and be treating the person as dead. And that would be at a risk of being kicked out yourself. But it sort of changes a little bit differently on what part of the world you're in. So they take it a bit more seriously in America. In my case over here, my grandma sometimes has been able to have conversations with me. When I've been in times of need, she has put me up in the house, but only for a couple of days. But she had to get permission from the elders, who had to have a meeting to decide whether or not it was possible to do, and all of that and everything.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of red tape and everything tied up in it. And some people can get away with, like my auntie, she was disfellowshipped years ago. My grandma still has a full relationship with her. But yeah. So it sort of depends on the person and the situation in this country.
Okay. So it's not necessarily the full. And by the way, are you okay with the just to make sure? I don't want you to feel that you got to
Oh
stay
no, I'm
on.
fine with it. I've just got a really sore throat. I
Okay.
didn't have a sore throat before the show, and then it came on. The throat's just got really bad. So I
No,
think
it's
it was
all
the
good.
chili
It's
I
all
had
good.
earlier.
Just wanted to make sure. So when a person is shunned and everything like that, it seems that, as you stated, it matters what the situation is, who the person is, and so on and so forth. That really matters if the person is looked at as dead or if the person is looked at as could be somebody who could come back to the fold. Like, I think that would be the reason why they wouldn't look at an individual as dead in a sense, or
Yeah.
to be completely shunned, is because they think that there's some sort of how could I say it, that they might come back to the fold later on, in a sense.
Yeah, I think it also depends on what they were disfellowshipped for, because whether you disassociate or whether you disfellowship, you are considered disfellowshipped, and there's no like different levels of it, like with prison sentences and things like that. Where you've got different levels in what you've actually done, but there's nothing like that. It's just, right, you brought this rule, right, you're out. That's it. But then I think it's sort of how badly you get shunned depends on what you actually did. So with my auntie, for instance, it was something about something that she'd done after she was abused in a marriage. I think it was to do with that she'd divorced the person that was abusing her, and divorce isn't allowed within Jehovah's Witnesses, so that's why they kicked her out.
Wow.
And I think it's just like everyone realizes, like the local elders realized that they had to remove her from the religion, and she didn't really want to be part of the religion anyway. But what she actually did sort of made sense in some ways. So it would be unfair to make her mother, my grandmother, shun her, especially with the grandkids and stuff as well. So I think there was that thing. Whereas in my case, the shunning was a lot more severe, because they basically kicked me out for everything that they could possibly kick me out for. So
Right. So
yeah,
that's
that's why it was a lot more severe in my case.
That's crazy. That is absolutely insanity. And is there anything, because that's another thing that I was thinking about too, is there anything for ex-Jehovah's Witnesses to go to, right? Like once they leave, because I know that there's a couple of ex-Jehovah's Witnesses on YouTube and a couple of other individuals who create Facebook groups and everything like that, which is absolutely fantastic. Don't get me wrong. But is there anything else that is on the outside that ex-Jehovah's Witnesses can kind of like get together and like discuss or be part of, like an ex-Jehovah's Witnesses community in a sense?
Well, there's communities like you mentioned online and things like that. But are you are you meaning like what a Jehovah's Witness would know about before leaving?
Like,
Or
What I mean is that is there any outlets, like once you leave, is there an outlet that is there in order for ex Jehovah's Witnesses to kind of see that there's another community which is out there, like is there another as like ex Jehovah's Witness groups that are getting together in like cafes or in some other spots and kind of like helping each other kind of reconstruct and reform their worldviews in a sense?
I suppose the answer to that would be only if you were lucky enough to have known someone who left recently to when you left, and you kept
Okay.
contact with them. There's like no, like we're now having to kick you out. Here's a leaflet with some numbers of the previous people we kicked out.
Good point.
There's nothing like that. And obviously, you are told not to use the internet. You are told not to associate with anybody who is outside of the organization. And that's how you've lived your entire life. So you've got no friends outside. You've got no family left outside, because anyone who's already left in your family is now not. You have not been contacting them, and they're probably really pissed off with you, because you've been shunning them. Like, you're now going to get shunned. So,
Right.
you've got nothing. I mean, even if you've got a job, you've been keeping your distance from all of your co-workers for the whole time you've had the job.
Wow.
So it's very little. It can take years for a Jehovah's Witness to find these groups of ex-Jehovah's
Wow.
Witnesses.
Okay, I thought that there might have been like groups or maybe like online,
These
right?
groups, it's just that no Jehovah's Witness who is just leaving is going to really have a chance of finding that group quickly, because no one's approaching them, because they're not approaching anybody else inside out, that's in the world as they've always believed it to be. So, and a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses who just leave or just kicked out
Wow.
spend the first few months, if not the first year, trying to keep up that lifestyle. Yeah.
Yeah, but it makes sense, right? Because even when a Muslim leaves Islam, for instance, for the first time, it's very difficult. Like, you think you're the only one and you think that you're probably insane for leaving the religion in the first place. And it's only when you finally start to look online or whatever and you start seeing that, wow, okay, I'm not really alone. Look at all these other individuals. But it takes time for you to really start to branch out into these other communities and stuff like that that are there. Is just that they're few in number at the very moment. So yeah, I see what you mean. I definitely see what you're. So the other thing that I would state is that would you think that if there were outlets that are out there, because like as you stated, it's very difficult when you come from a cult to really how to flesh out, right, the how well, let me try to say this again. If you come from a cult, it is harder for you to go into other groups and everything like that, because it's kind of like, well, I'm the odd one out, so why would I join into this group? Like, they might not even understand where I'm kind of coming from, or there can be these other fears which are there in general, right? And it's just that I think, just like how we stated at the beginning of the show, that atheists should try to continue to speak with ex Jehovah's Witness individuals, just to try to show that, look, we're not trying to use you in any way. We're actually trying to bring you within a community that is going to try to benefit your circumstance in the future, in a sense, and in future time. Because that's the whole entire thing. And definitely with the Atheist Uprising, I really want to start actually creating community centers and everything like that for individuals, no matter where you come from, being an ex, whatever the situation is, that you feel secure and you feel safe within these community centers.
Yeah.
And
I wish I'd have had that when I first left. I mean, it took me years, soul searching and trying to find, what my beliefs were, what I did believe, what I didn't believe, anything, try and find my place in the world, who I was and where what I do after once I've left and everything. It took me years to do that. I mean, if I'd had a community like what you're wanting to build here, then it wouldn't have taken as long to find myself and to get a sure footing. And
right.
I think it's very important, especially with cults. Is there isn't a lot of lifelines for those people that leave.
Hmm. I completely agree. And I think that we need to have something that is much more inclusive when it
Yeah,
comes to individuals that are from cults and everything like that, and really hear their story, hear what has happened to them, why it had happened to them, and let them know that there's a community here willing to help them through whatever the situation may be. If they need somebody to talk to, we're here to speak in order to really get certain things off the individual's chest, whoever they may be. And I think that in the future, I think atheist groups and atheist movements need to start having that's there, And oh, hold on. There seems to be a question from Electro Live. Welcome, my friend. Welcome. What is the most effective way to help JWs? Um,
well, that's a tough question. It's a very good question, in fact. Off the top of my head, I'd say, from my own experience, the best way would be to understand what it is that the Jehovah's Witnesses, the XJW, is now actually going through. Understand what it is that they've lost and how little they now have in their lives, because they've basically lost their entire life, their family, their friends, their work, their sometimes even the house that they live in. They have now lost everything. So they're starting from scratch. So understand that, and then just give them as much support as possible. Be there for them, even if it is just for a shoulder to cry on, because they're going to be extremely upset and in a very bad place mentally in their lives after they've lost all of that. So just be there for them and just try to support them in any way that they want to move in their life.
I would second that. I think that is the best way to move forward, right? Because it's extremely difficult, let alone from a person to leave a mainstream religion is hard enough. But there's all these groups that are out there for these particular individuals. However, I think, and yes, thank you, Katie, for stating that. I completely agree with Scott there, Electro Live. But I think the reality is that there seems to be certain communities that fall through the cracks. And that is something that I find is the fault of the community itself. Because not the community that is isolated, but the community that has the most numbers within it, which is the mainstream atheist movements. If you're just going to say, well, I'm going to have a conversation with individuals or whatever, but I'm not going to try hard, I'm not going to try to reach out there and really interact with these individuals that have come from cult movements and everything like that, you yourself have become part of the problem because you haven't tried hard enough. And the thing is, what I think that comes through, and I know a lot of atheist individuals would probably be pissed at me from saying this, but a lot of individuals just want the views. They're not really looking for the actual helping of people. They just want to be like, look, this guy is huge, has a whole crap ton of followers, so I'm going to go and grab onto him and bring him into the mist. The reality of the situation is that if you're doing that, you're literally missing so many other people who are out there, who are in the fringes, just wanting to get that help and wanting a community to be part of. But you're only focusing on such big individuals in order to inflate the numbers of your particular YouTube channel or your particular organization, that everybody else just kind of just gets filtered out, and there's nothing really there for them. So just like how Katie stated with that
subscriber syndrome. Yeah,
exactly. I like that. I think I will coin that from now on. Subscriber syndrome. Yes. And that's the reality, right? And I think that the more we start to realize that we're out here trying to give information and proper information, but not just that, we're trying to help people. And if we're trying to help people and individuals that are suffering from these cults and these religions, we need to try harder to reach out to these not organizations, but to these individuals.
Yeah.
And even if it might be a battle and a half in order to do it, we need to try in order to really build that sense of community with people. And I think once we do that, and once we put into effect what Katie stated, we will be able to create a much stronger community from that than just the subscriber-based community of subscriber syndrome. And that's what I think we as atheists need to do. And that's one of the big reasons why I created the Atheist Uprising, was for that number one purpose, to help individuals that have been left behind by the larger groups that are out there.
Yeah, and that's exactly why I've joined on to help you as well. I believe in exactly the same ideals, and I want to see that become a reality.
Absolutely. And that's the thing, is just that Jehovah's Witness is just one cult out of many that are out there. And they have caused so much harm to individuals that have left. And not only just individuals that have left, but individuals who are still within the cults. These individuals don't understand the amount of harm that they're in until they're unfortunate enough to be excommunicated from these particular groups. And the only way for us to truly reach out is to combat the ideology which is there, to combat the ideology and to hinder the ideology from expanding. And how do we do that? Inform individuals of what they're actually dealing with. So when they come face to face with that ideology, they're now able to have the tools that are necessary so that they are not bamboozled by individuals who are just going to speak to them at their lowest point, or when they're confused, or whatever the situation is, and they will easily transfer or move from what they were at that moment into Jehovah's Witness or any of these other cults. So I think,
and I can't stress how important that is as well. I mean, if you're going to tackle a religion like Jehovah's Witnesses, you're never going to convert the Jehovah's Witness away from Jehovah's Witnesses, because of the way that they clamp down on the brainwashing and the rules and the regulations and all of that. They clamp down so hard on that you're never going to be able to convert them away. I mean, sorry, yeah. So and it's only getting worse as well. I mean, my brother was telling me that, because he still goes, he's not disfellowshipped. He was never actually baptized. So he still gets to go and see my grandma. And he said that the last time he spoke to her, she had mentioned that she's now having a meeting every single day with the congregation.
Wow.
not just the 3 a week that I used to have when I was a kid. She now has to have a conversation and a meet up with all of them every single day of the week.
That's insane. But what I would also throw out there, though, is that wouldn't that show the weakness of Jehovah's Witness?
They
Because
are
that's
they
the
are
number one
they are
thing,
struggling.
right? Is
They
that
are very struggling.
they know at this very moment that their foundation is extremely shaky, right?
Hmm.
But if and only if we continue to combat this ideology either head on or even just because just like how I used to do when talking with Jehovah's Witnesses that would just come right to my door is to sit down and discuss with them ideas of science, ideas of certain philosophies and everything like that. And that
Yeah.
actually helped out certain individuals where even they were like, you know what, I don't know that question, but I'll come back tomorrow in order to have a conversation again. And I think that's the number one thing that a lot of people, too many people I find, shut the door on Jehovah's Witness because they're annoying or whatever the situation is. But the reality is if you sit down and you converse with these individuals, you can slowly but surely start to move them in a particular way that then starts to make them question what they actually believe in. And I think that's the number one thing that if you are an atheist or whatever, don't shun or slam the door or whatever because you're just reaffirming what they actually think. Look, the sinner is going to close the door on me, and they don't want to take in the word of Jehovah.
Oh
Right?
yeah, I completely agree. You should, if they do knock on your door, start asking them tough questions because
Absolutely.
they're not going to be prepared for it.
Absolutely. And I think that's the thing, right? Ask them questions, but at the same exact time, just have a conversation, right? Ask some hard questions, have a conversation. That doesn't mean that you're going to convert when you're hearing the thing or whatever. It just means that now you have an opportunity to help individuals get out of that religion slowly but surely. And that's the really good thing, too, is that over time, you will have an effect because I know that I've had an effect on certain Jehovah's Witnesses. They came to my door and everything like that. That towards the extent that they had to start switching individuals because certain individuals were coming way too often to my house to have conversations. And to tell you the
Yeah,
truth, at the end of the day or whatever, near the end of the month, we were not even talking about Jehovah anymore. We were talking about science. We were talking about all these things that were beneficial for human flourishing and everything like that. And that's the number one thing that we need to start to do. Have
yeah,
those conversations.
exactly. Show them how shaky the beliefs actually are and how many holes they are in the beliefs, which is quite easy to do with Jehovah's Witnesses. But yeah, it's just trying to
Absolutely.
get past the brainwashing is the hard thing. Uh, and once you get past that brainwashing, it is quite easy from that point on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And all in all, before we end this,
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to end soon because my throat is getting really bad for some reason.
no worries. And I do appreciate that you've come on. I know it's very late over where you are. So thank you so much for coming on in the first place. And sorry for all the mishaps that ended up happening before we even
It's
jumped
all right.
on. But
I'm happy to help out.
oh, dude, seriously, it's always an honor, always a pleasure. And I actually really enjoy working with you as well. And in future projects that we are going to have on the Atheist Uprising is going to be great working alongside with you in order to bring these projects into fruition and everything. So I really do appreciate that you are helping me out in this endeavor. So thank you. It really means a lot to me. So before we end, is there any last things that you would like to state to the audience that are at this moment?
Well, I think the question that that was asked from Scott Williamson there was just fantastic, and I don't think I could actually come up with anything better than the answer that I gave him there. So that.
Yeah, that was a fantastic question that Scott did ask. And the way that you answered it, I do 100% agree with. And I think that that's more the way that we should be moving forward, is creating these sense of communities in order to actually be there for each other when we're at our lowest points and when we're at our highest points, to be there to celebrate when we do something that is really great for the community, and not only for the community, but for ourselves, So that's I think is a beautiful thing that we can definitely work and strive for in order to get to that point. But all in all, I would just like to say thank you again to our Patreon supporters, Linear and TART, for really helping me do what I love doing, which is creating videos and creating content for you, the viewer, to watch. So thank you again so much for just helping me out doing that. And I would have to say farewell for now, but I will see you next weekend on the on the Atheist Uprising. Until then, have a great week and continue doing what you do. Chicken please, everybody.